When I was a child, I used to write stories, plays, and even act out scenes with figurines to non-existent audiences and stuffed animals. The topics of my stories often mirrored what I saw on the news and television. Trauma, fear, and loss crept their way into my plots, even as early as age 6. I simply absorbed the information I consumed. And as I grew older and language became a pivotal aspect of my life in school, I found myself writing the cliches I heard, words that sounded good, stories I only told because I wanted to share them with others. The words were there, but they lacked the backbone, the intention. And ever since I could remember, I wanted to make a difference. But what did that even mean? What's a story without an intentional humanistic purpose? How do we communicate using language to catapult us towards change? Well, when I was 16, I took my first ever college course on campus. Young, awkward, I knew 2 things. 1, it was an introduction to philosophy course, and 2, my professor was a priest. It turns out that Father was not only incredibly eccentric, but also known as one of the most difficult professors on campus, which said a lot considering the syllabus didn't even have a textbook. First day arrives, formalities, introductions, and then this. He simply stated that he could not find a textbook that fit his definition of introduction to philosophy, so he wrote his own. I mean, what? Which brings me to my first point. The first step to using language as a vehicle for change is to be ready to communicate and educate your own way. It's about laying down the pavement that only you can come up with to drive your story. Shit. Those were Father's first words out of his mouth on the second day of class. But he knew what we were all thinking. Can a priest even say that? Of course he can say that. The purpose for his profanity was to prove a point. Without context, purpose, no basis for reality, it's just a dumb word. Language, how we communicate, that's the heart of philosophy. Or at least that's how I remember it. We have this preconceived assumption that language is synonymous with words. Language, by definition, is a structured way of communicating, using speech, writing, and even gesture. It embodies nearly every aspect of how we communicate with those around us. And in a society where I feel like is the prelude to most sentences, we lose the call to action. We lose the purpose. To feel is to simply be aware. These loose phrases and empty conversations make way for what I like to call jello change. Just like feelings, these sentences are not firm. Emotion drives passion, so now we must let logic, creativity, and confidence drive our language. Take, for example, the statement, I feel like the student was treated unfairly. But why? Change your perception now. The student was treated unfairly due to lack of resources. Which sentence propels change and starts the conversation? So in 2020, shortly after the Black Lives Matter movement blossomed following the summer after the death of George Floyd, I wanted to start a conversation about the lack of diverse curriculum at the university I recently graduated from. So I researched and researched and researched and eventually came up with the plan to launch a local petition to add a core curriculum requirement for diversity at the university. My plan of attack was bold. I was a recent alumnus, young, naive in many ways, and searching for change. I decided to write the president of the university with my plan. Each word carefully chosen, double-checked, defined. I knew what I needed to say, and I knew I needed to be careful about how I said it. I feel like wouldn't work here. So I hit send, and the email flew into the world. Within hours, I saw dozens of petition signatures, hundreds of shares, side conversations that started because of it. And eventually, after being connected to the core curriculum committee at the university, I was able to further the conversation and initiate not only thought, but catapult social change. The community responses roared. I went in wanting a conversation, but through the power of language, I initiated change. So where do you begin? Well, when I was an advocate working at my local domestic and sexual violence resource center, I quickly realized the impact of language on advocacy. As a program, or as an advocate, one of the things we want to do when working with a program participant is let them drive the bus. We want to empower them, guide them, not take control. So now it's your turn to drive the bus and pave your own path to using language to advocate for change. Be unconventional. Just as my professor wrote his own textbook, the book won't always be written. The story might not have ever been told. Be unconventional in the ways you explain and express yourself, in the ways you examine situations and look for more unique and creative opportunities to find your story. One memory that comes to mind is when I had to respond to the statement with a program participant who said, "I'm broken." What could I say to get her to see that that wasn't the case? So I painted a picture. I said, picture a mug. When it falls, it breaks, but a mug is a finished product. Now picture clay. When clay falls, it molds to its surroundings. It changes shape, but it doesn't break. You are not finished product. Sometimes you have to be unconventional to show or tell your story. Be unyielding. Be firm in your language and avoid falling victim to Jell-O change. Avoiding the "I feel likes" can be difficult, especially when you're in a situation where your story must be powerful. But as an advocate, one of the things we always learned is putting our emotions aside for the benefit of the population we're working with. So next time you go to advocate for a story, try replacing "I feel like" with "I think" or "I know," and see if it still makes sense. Lastly, be you. The little, young, cliché girl that told cliché stories grew up. And I grew up to spread awareness, to start difficult conversations, to open opportunities, and to use my voice to communicate better here today with you. And as stereotypical as being yourself may sound, no one else can speak better for you than yourself. So pave your own path, communicate with intention, initiate the conversations, and perceive the world through your own eyes. Our differences allow us to think differently. Now it's your turn to use language to advocate for your story. Thank you.